Welcome to the final part of our conversation with Wolfgang Goebl. We've talked about why architects struggle and how to make enterprise architecture practical with edgy. Now, let's talk about impact. How do you position yourself as an architect to truly make a difference? Wolfgang shares his best lessons, from choosing the right opportunities to knowing when to walk away. Do you want to sharpen your skills as an enterprise architect? Welcome to Verbonden, the podcast where we combine insights from experienced professionals with real-world examples from the world of architecture. My name is Elise Luijks, and I am your guide through the layers of enterprise architecture, making it less mythical and more concrete.
I'm just looking at the questions that I find, but you already tackled some of them. For example, how architects and designers how can they work better together across silos, which you kind of already said because of the shared understanding and language, and physical presence is also very important, I hear.
Physical presence,
or not?
Yeah, but of course, I mean, what I used to say is one half of the job of an enterprise designer, architect, however you want to call that person. I call myself an enterprise design coach. I see many aspects of coaching, which is very human oriented, which works more with the creativity and wants to inspire the creativity of others, the people who have the business aspects. If you have this systemic viewpoint, socio-technical, and they say, okay, I came down the technical part, I'm an engineer, okay. And later I learned social interventions and systemic coaching and so on. Now I think it's 50-50. You must play both games. No, you must be able to do both, to structure processes, capabilities, IT platforms. It's an analytical task. And you can clearly separate this analytical task from the social part. Obstacles, fear. There's so much fear in organizations these days. And fear sometimes is a blocker to your future state design. People maybe get laid off if you want to have more efficient processes. And that's maybe why they won't do the co-creation aspects. So if you say, hey, we invite everybody to a co-creation, maybe you get fired after that. Maybe they won't really
work with me.
So those aspects are
okay
everywhere, and you must be aware of both aspects.
That's actually a human emotion, fear, and there's this matrix in psychology, I think, that anger you have to move, and in fear you need to get information, get informed. So that's why I'm guessing also that as an architect, or in my position, I try to give transparent info at that point.
Transparency is a strong term, and it sounds obvious, but it's tough, because what I've learned is, after 15 years, is that the only person who really wants transparency is the one on the top. If you go down the ladder, talk to heads of business units, departments, most of the time there are some flaws in the organizations. So they have too many people that report to them, and they know that. And of course, they want to keep their people. They want maybe to cover the flaws they have. They don't really want transparency. But then you come in. Tell me everything about your processes and where are the problems and in which teams do we have too many people? We want to fire them. And maybe the manager does not have the interest to improve his department. Then they don't like transparency, which means in my role, what I always try to get, usually I start at the IT level, at the lowest level in the organization. But you must, over time, in half a year, 2 years, find a way to climb up the ladder. Finally, you must get somehow the mandate by senior management. because they want to have the transparency. So when I create a capability model, a future state architecture process, whatever, I start bottom up. Yeah, but and then there's usually sometimes a blocker, because some middle manager does not want the transparency. So they hide information, they block the change. Yeah. And that's a crucial moment, because at that moment you must have a good contact to the person in charge, because they want transparency, they want the change. Hopefully, if they don't want to change, you can't do anything, of course.
Yeah, that's of course true in a hierarchic organization. But there's different management cultures as well.
Okay.
Well, I don't know if you have most of your experiences in this hierarchy or not. Yeah. So that's very good to have then a contact with higher management, I guess.
I mean, you can easily translate it to more autonomous decision structures. I don't see many companies that truly have implemented that in Austria. I've never seen a single one. I know those concepts, new work and holacracy and so on. I've never seen it work. But if you do it that way, you can translate it in the people whoever makes the big decision. And you must find somebody who wants to change, and that's your sponsor. Yeah. And you report to them, and they, one person, whoever, the guys who really want to do the change, and you inform them, and they do the politics, and you deliver design, future states, the analytical parts. That's what I try to do usually.
So you're making I always call it a tandem bike. You know, it's a bike for two people to be on, like one person having the leverage in the organization, and the other one who is supporting, and the person in front, he's got the steer, and it's his duty to get you there, and then you are on the back, and you have a map, and you're also helping him to cycle.
I mean, in our books, we use a slightly different metaphor, a sailing boat, where the enterprise designer is on the front of the boat with a little compass, and behind him is the manager with the steering wheel, and hopefully he follows your directions. But of course, the managers, visionaries, business experts have their own visions and own ideas and directions. But having a strong interplay between you as enterprise design coach, enterprise architect, whatever, and the manager who can actually make the decision, managers who can actually make the decision, is crucial, of course. You inform them, they make the decision, you inform them about the consequences of the decision. If you manage to get to this position, then you will not be frustrated anymore.
Yeah.
But it's tough. I've done it successfully twice in my career, and I've failed way more often. So.
Right. Yeah. What are the key lessons during your career that you picked up on, that from failure we always learn? So what are the most important lessons for you that you can share, of course, with the listeners?
I mean, maybe the first thing is ask a lot of questions in your job interview when you start a new assignment. Try to get as much information about the context as possible to find out, does this company really want and need this change? How strong is the momentum? Too often, enterprise architects are hired only to somehow manage the application portfolio, and not really for a more exciting change. Too often. So check your context. Do you have a good chance to get your impact step by step? Do they really want to change? And the person who pays your bill and who is your sponsor, are they politically connected? So usually what I ask in a job interview, quite often it's the CIO. So I reported to the CIO in most of my assignments, is to find out how well is the CIO connected to senior management. usually they are weak. That's also an experience. So if your boss will be the CIO, which is the case most of the time, I'm not sure if this is the position where you should be, but I think the job opportunities where you report to the one level higher, to the business senior management, are rare, because people still see enterprise architecture as IT, and find out how much power does the CIO have. It's not easy in the job interview, but you will find out in the first year anyway.
Also very, if I look at it from a very, very generalizing perspective, if you go to an online selling business, a fast-moving consumer goods selling online, I don't know if that makes sense, but then the CIO will have a very critical position in the organization. For example, if you have a school, or a schooling, a group of schools, there's a CIO there. Well, their influence is probably less on the organization, because the digital footprint within the organization, it's also crucial for the leverage of the CIO.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
That's true. Yeah, I mean that's one thing. Yeah, and then maybe one important pattern is to know when to leave. Usually after 2 years, you get a feeling: do they really want to change? Can I really make this impact? And in my first job, it took me too long to make the decision to leave. It was clear after 3 or 4 years that the impact is gone. There was this merger, and it's not fun to do architecture by politics and being overruled by political decisions that did not make any sense. So if you are in a situation where you use your impact on the business, if you only manage the application portfolio and make suggestions for consolidation from IT platforms, and only from this perspective, you will never have the impact on the business that you should have. Enterprise architecture is way more than application portfolio management, yet most of us do application portfolio management and call it enterprise architecture. Maybe
Which it's okay is also I was thinking the same thing. It can be fun too for the people who want to do that. But if you want to move into enterprise design, and also, then you will not be eternally happy in that position. I can imagine. Yeah.
And know when to leave. Yeah, there are clear indicators when I usually leave a job.
Okay. Cool. Yeah. So the first one was ask the right questions before you start, and then the other one is knowing when to leave. And it's all focused on, for you, what it really seems to be important is having the momentum, having some kind of reason why the company wants to make change. Yeah.
I think that human beings like to have impact. That's why we're on the planet. Some people may have a stronger urge to have impact. I want to change. I want to make the world better, place, peace, and whatever. Yeah, I think that's human. Most of us. Some people more, some people less. So if you are happy with managing the application portfolio and filling the enterprise architecture tool with data and having thousands of applications and documenting them, I know enterprise architects. They've been doing that for decades. I don't know. Maybe they are happy, but maybe that's know who you are. If you want to have an impact, if you are fascinated by change, helping the company getting better, then you must be aware to have the right context, and must be sure that the people around you also want to change.
Yeah, recently I've been also learning on types of people and what drives us as humans, and I learned that there's indeed some people who want to be at the forefront of the change, like yourself, like myself. I guess that we are kind of the same in this. Then there's people that really love to know what is expected, and they will do everything to make it happen, to make it into a reality. And then there's the people who say that I just want to know what I need to do and just tell me, that's fine. These are like three big categories that we all need. Yeah.
But I think if you want to call yourself an enterprise designer or architect, the title and the role I think it includes shaping the future. If you say, I'm an enterprise designer, but I don't want to design the future state of my enterprise, I just want to take care of my IT repository, then you are not an enterprise architect or designer. You're an application portfolio manager, an accountant, which shouldn't sound dismissive. We also need that. We need to know our IT assets and structure them and know the costs. There are lots of jobs in accounting and also in IT accounting and so on. That's needed to manage the status quo. But enterprise design and enterprise architecture is about reshaping the business. Yeah. It's about reshaping the business.
Mm-hmm. To what extent, for you, is it important to stay involved until the delivery? Because, for example, a company that wants to sell products online, if there's never a web shop built, then they will never sell anything. So you can have an idea of a good product, which is in the ideation part, in the design part. But at what point do you stay involved in looking at the products that arrive at the end customer, for example?
Yeah, in Intersection Group, we have the mission statement, we help people create better enterprises, create, not design. That may be surprising because we feature the slogan or we call it enterprise design, but we don't want to design enterprises. We want to help people create. That's why we help them to create. This is a strong commitment that the best design is worthless if it's not implemented. So that means you must stay involved somehow. Maybe not you as a person, but you must have friends maybe in the solution architecture department, for example. That's what I usually do. So I'm always trying to connect the architecture layers from strategy, business architecture, capability processes down to software architecture. In my company currently, we have great software architects, and I have a weekly meeting with them. So that means that all architecture layers must be connected until realization. So the developer who writes the piece of code must be the reason why he writes this line of Java or so must be traceable to a capability. Why do I need this feature? Maybe to improve a certain capability or process. And I want this kind of traceability to happen. Of course, I can't write all the code. My last finished as a programmer 25 years ago. Maybe I should not write code. But I understand, and I've seen too many enterprise architects which were strategy only. So they are these PowerPoint architects. So this high level. You must find a way that your maps are implemented. Find a way. No need that you implement it, at least it's my opinion, because if you still implement, you don't have enough time to have the broad view. So maybe others are better in implementation, but enable and make connections that it gets implemented.
Yeah. For me personally, it's also lovely to start with the idea, but also experience it from the end customer. I have a very tangible example from my own career. At the city of Antwerp, I worked at the government, and we made this. This was my first project as a business architect, and they said we need to anonymously send links that are relevant to citizens to the citizens. What was happening is that a lot of employees from the government, they were in contact with citizens, and they were getting all kinds of questions which were not in their department, and they would refer to certain solutions that the city was offering. Now, what was very fun was they always sent it with their own email. So if there was a problem or a follow-up question, they would actually receive the email, and sometimes even with their private address or their phone, which they take home as well. So they will get WhatsApps from citizens in their free time, which is not very healthy. That's why we decided, we will make an application for it with some of the basic, mostly used links. People can customize them as well, because in different positions they will have to use different links very often. And then I was at 3 years later. I was at the how you call it, at the locket, at the counter, and the person who was in front of me, they said like, yeah, I will send you the link to this. And then I saw on the screen my application that I designed. The point that I want to make is it's also so much fun if you come up with an idea and then a few years later it's still in use or even longer. And then I actually said to the person like, that's my application. I worked on it. I created it. And they said like, really? Because I really love it. I use it all the time.
Interesting.
Yeah.
What I usually try to do, I've done it with my current assignment, is after 1 year or so, I want to trigger a lighthouse project. So some consolidation, master data in the current, working in the energy business. And what I've seen is, okay, they have master data of electrical assets in 7 databases, so a typical consolidation project. We want to have a single platform for all of our asset master data. Classical project, consolidation project. A huge challenge for my company. I started it 2 years ago, and I went to the board. I set up the governance structure, but I want this project to happen. So then you need to, then it's also a good test to see if they really want to change, because it's a different thing if you have a capability map or a future state platform architecture and you have a box and say, okay, asset master data, there's a platform. It's easy to draw it on a PowerPoint or whatever slide, but it's not as easy to trigger a project where they invest some million euro and focus their energy. So you must do some lobbying, argue, and so on. So I've always seen my role also in triggering projects that otherwise wouldn't have been triggered. Because nobody thinks in my current company, for example, they don't really think in this kind of consolidations that are quite often needed. That's one thing. And the second thing is the connection between business architecture, enterprise design, however you want to call it, and project portfolio management or their change and transformation office. Typically, companies have something where they manage the investments in the projects. You can do it in SAFe, you can do it in which style ever, but there are maybe 50, 100 projects, initiatives going on in parallel. And you must be like that with this project management office. So your architecture must inform the project portfolio and the dependencies. All too often, there's also a huge gap between the big project manager. I've had this in some companies. I'm the project manager. I make the decisions. And as an architect, I say, yeah, please, I want this architect. Could we do it that way? No, we cannot do it because that's too expensive and we are not in time and not in budget. That's what those guys usually like. They want to be in time and budget. They don't care about the scope usually. So that's their mindset. But this combination between somebody who has the vision, future state design, platform, whatever, process efficiency, something better in the future, reshaping the enterprise, and having the friend in the multi-project project management office, that's powerful. That's like yin and yang. They must be together. It should be also organizationally be together. There should not be a project management office. Nobody should do SAFe without an enterprise designer, business architect in the house who facilitates the pipe planning, for example, right? So there's also a sad situation we have today. The people who are managing the 10,000s of sticky in a SAFe pipe planning are usually not the enterprise designers or architects in the house. So there are huge chasm between them.
I also hear that you have a lot of connection within the organization, and I think that's a lot of coffees as well that you go have with colleagues. To get in every department some kind of relation in the IT, in the UX, in the PMO project portfolio.
I would always suggest that companies have the PMO and the enterprise design business architects in the same organizational unit. That would be powerful, but I haven't seen that often.
I agree with that. That would be a best practice, actually. Yeah.
But it's nowhere, I think. I've not seen it often.
I got one more question for you as a wrap-up. Okay. How do you... what is one key lesson that you would want to share with our listeners?
One key lesson.
Yeah.
Know who you are, know your personal vision for the enterprise. So you start an assignment, let's say, you're new in the company. What is it what you want to get done? Your personal vision, what drives you in relation to this company? Which means if you listen to yourself and say, okay, I'm more a person who wants to keep the lights on and I want to manage the architecture repository and I'm more like an accountant and that we need those people, that's fine, but you must be aware of that and then manage the repository of IT applications, for example. But if you feel that you want to make a change happen, maybe in a purposeful enterprise, I'm currently working in the energy transformation, deeply in the climate, we are fighting climate change. That's a strong purpose in my company. But my personal vision is to help them making the energy transformation happen. So this purpose-driven, get hired in a company where you can relate to, where the identity, the purpose is something you want really to change or make better. And then you have a lot of power. And then what is it what you want and can achieve in the next 1 to 3 years? And then follow that. And if after 2 or 3 years, things change all of the time, the new management, reorganization, merger, things happen. Be brave enough. Don't fear to change your job. I mean, times are good for enterprise architects. I think so. A lot of job offerings. I see a lot of job offerings. Don't waste your time in companies that don't want to change. If you want to change things for a purposeful better, and the company doesn't have the capability, doesn't want it, don't waste your time. You will find another one.
Yeah. Thank you for your very nice message, and and taking the time to be on the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's always a pleasure. I hope I wasn't talking too much.
The right amount.
Thank you.
That wraps up our conversation with Wolfgang. We explored the struggle of enterprise architecture, the Agile framework, and how to maximize your impact. His key message? Know your purpose. Choose organizations that align with you. And have the courage to leave when they don't. Many thanks to Pieter-Jan Rombout for producing and editing, and to Leonard Busset for the intro music. And of course, thank you for listening, and see you next time